our annual student seminar that has over the years become a hallmark of students' intellectual engagement and meaningful discourse.
The themes we explore today, gender, the environment, and political change, are deeply interconnected.
And thus the interconnectedness between gender, environment, and political changes will be a complete and a much more successful endeavor. That is.
Because I think they represented two different sides of the discussion. One is about the need, as ma'am said, about the need for the, as to why gender and environment.
I'm going in cold areas. Mostly the men, because of the nature of the job. The women, যারা agricultural party সাহায্য করতো, তারা কি করতে শুরু করলো? তারা বাড়িতে থাকতে শুরু করলো. They don't have any.
Gender are involving more and more women in decision making will not serve the purpose. So it's not inclusion which matters. It is a much more gender mainstreaming approaches which matters so far as coming up.
After Amphan, after Yas, after Funny, Bulbul, and so many, the first major, to most of the agricultural land.
Leadership, so that we are engaged as gender, we are engaged as environmental protection activists, we are engaged as persons who always think about change, and change in terms of politics, in terms of numbers, and not in terms of quality.
Now, I would request Ms. Archana Verma to please come up on the stage.
So, good afternoon everyone here. As we know, the topic for our panel presentation is From Margins to Center, Gender, Environment and Political Change.
They are the ones who are disproportionately affected by climate change, and they need to be heard, and their voices need to be heard so as to bring about actual change in our society.
A degree of acceptable sexist humor, they are also more likely to approve of policies that put women down, or they are more likely, or when they are subjected to humor that targets climate activists, they are in fact more likely to actually side against them on specific issues. So despite the fact that 4 times more women than men are they're always being told, you need to take a joke, right? It's just a joke. It really isn't just a joke, because it always has practical consequences in the world as it stands today, right?
Crisis is not at all gender neutral, and the impacts are of course undeniable, but we have to look forward because women nowadays are participating in the environmental politics and also the public life. And if we especially talk about the center, we can take the example of United States. Over there are 334 million people, and if you look at the ratio of male is to female, that is 98 is to 100. So the number of females are more. And if we look at the or the politicians, we can take the example of, as we see in the we can see the picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She proposed the Green New Deal, and she is the youngest woman and youngest Latina to ever serve in Congress. And her voice was powerful in speaking on behalf of those experiencing social inequalities in communities across the nation.
Archetypes to validate their roles as guardians of environment and nature. For instance, Salumarada Timbukka reportedly mentioned she began planting trees facing rejection for being barren or childless. Today, 113-year-old Timbukka, once reprimanded societally for being bunched or childless, is celebrated as mother of more than 8,000 trees.
Or various other schemes in Udaipur and other cities. Even in spite of such policies or legislations, we still do not see that much representation of women, or even talk about in case of climate. We do not see that. What is your observation, since you have researched on it? What is your observation would be the loophole or drawback that prevents the representation of women in this area in spite of whatever legislations and policies have been initiated?
The answer would be very basic, because we all believe that charity begins at home and education is very important in each and every house. And even we have Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and it provides free education for all the children, but still now we have dropouts. And the goal was to be achieved by 2010, but still now we can see that there are lack of education in many remote areas. So I feel women should be much more aware, and the parents, especially, they should provide the girls, the girl children more education, because as I've said, charity begins at home. And ethical education is also important for both the genders. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
Basically very happy to see that the basis of what's happening today. So much students on both sides of the table. So it's great for me to be here today. With Loreto College. Is that fine by you? Farmer, the first image that comes to our mind is general, is that of man. This is how deep the gender connotation of these two terms.
Let's take the case of reference. Reducing emissions from deforestation and forest reclamation projects in May. While intended to curb deforestation and emissions, many of these projects clearly ignore the rights and from the relief and humanitarian policies provided by the state government. Thus, climate mitigation process, rather being neutral, reinforce pre-existing social hierarchies in ecological governance. Moving on to the next slide.
The most affected in the climate change have the least power in shaping responses. This leads us to the question that if women bear the brunt of climate disaster, why are they excluded from climate governance?
Or paid for it, it only increases the shoulder bulk of household responsibilities along with their formal employment. This social archetype reinforces systematic inequality and legitimizes overwork. Does it face systematic exclusion from national resources, endure segregation, experience landlessness, and have restricted access to vital resources due to class-based fuel
that are the structures. We human beings, wildlife, animals, biodiversity, we are the agencies, and the interaction between the structure and the agency is what affects the environment, that is in this case the natural environment. And that environment's reaction we get in the form of climate. So if climate changes, that is on us. Whatever we feed to the climate, that is how the climate changes and reacts to it, right? Now in this particular case, if we say that the developed states should take a greater responsibility because they had
what is common is that all of the solutions require extremely huge amounts of investment. Investment in renewable energy, in sustainable infrastructure, in research and in innovation. Therefore, the least that the developed nations can do is to contribute a little bit from their ill-gotten gains of exploitation towards developing nations so that they can get a chance at sustainable development.
Limit temperature under 1.5 degrees centigrade. Such less time to save Mother Earth.
Okay, give a little bit back. Right. And your question was?
Be in a position where they can very well put in their sort of political agenda or their sort of environmental or whatever societal agenda on developing nations, which is essentially the very thing that we are trying to avoid here today. Thirdly, green protectionism. Using unfair environmental trade sanctions or trade barriers on developing nations, you can very well make export difficult for us as in the developing nation.
Responsibility. Today, the opposition would hide behind the vague idea that shared responsibility when damage is disproportionate. The response must be as well. If developed nations had the power to shape this era in the first place, they must very well have the obligation to repair it, and anything less is cowardice. Thank you.